This is Motovore. I'm Tushar, and today we've been riding all those motorcycles. That is the 2017 lineup of the Bajaj Pulsar family. Let's take a closer look. The observant trolls among you have probably noticed that there are 7 bikes over here. Those same trolls have probably also noticed that my beard is particularly unruly today. Anyway, there are 7 bikes here provided to each one of us from the media. However, only 6 of these are new. The Bajaj Pulsar 150, which is the only one that Bajaj considers actually upgraded, has been provided along with a previous generation Pulsar 150, which you can see second to last over there, just for comparison's sake. We're going to start off with this side of the lineup and go down and tell you what's new and what's changed. This is the 2017 Pulsar RS200. Immediately apparent, of course, is the new paint scheme. The 2017 model comes in this blue and white and a rather fetching grey and black, which looks fairly sinister. What Bajaj has done with the RS200 is address complaints about the rather loud bodywork that this bike has. I really don't think there's any other way to describe it. It is overt. There are so many creases, character lines and cuts in the plastic bodywork, in the fairing, that it just looks a little bit overdone. What Bajaj have tried to do with the 2017 model is tone down the graphics a little bit so that it takes away a little bit from all that busy stuff going on with the bodywork, and I think they've probably succeeded. They have, however, just like the other bikes on the lineup, added this fake carbon finish. I could take it or leave it, but it's there. It's a nice looking bike now. This blue and white, it's a little bit Suzuki, but it looks good. Also different is they've done this funky stuff with the wheels. The front wheel on this paint scheme is blue and the rear is black. Specs remain unchanged. Of course, this bike is compliant with Bharat Stage 4 as it needs to be in order to be sold in the country. Now for the downside, that tail light. It looks like it belongs in a Kulfi Faluda center. It does not belong on a small sports bike. And of course, the shape. Returning for 2017 is the Pulsar NS200. If you recall, the NS200, the naked version, had disappeared from the lineup some time back to be replaced by the AS200, which evidently or purportedly was for the adventure touring enthusiast. The NS200 is back and the AS200 has now disappeared. New for 2017, this rather nice and wild red and grey color scheme. Looks really good. I think across the 2017 lineup, this grey and red certainly is among the better looking. Yeah, even compared to the RS, the NS looks pretty wild. We do get a single color in terms of wheels. I don't have much experience with the NS200, but my colleagues seem to universally acclaim its handling characteristics this year. Bajaj tells us that is in part thanks to these MRF Nylogrips Zapper tires, which were not the case on the previous NS200. Those used Eurogrip tires, which apparently were not up to the task. Feels like a nice bike. It's reasonably fast, picks up speed fairly quickly. No fake carbon trim here. Oh, that's strange. Not much else to report about the NS200 except that it's there, it returns, and there's no AS200. Here we go with the 2017 Pulsar 220F. Substantially the same. You get slightly different graphics. You've got those rim tapes in broken segments, and in this case, once again, you've got the fake carbon trim. To make it BS4 compliant, you'll see there's a little bit more plumbing in this area. Got this pipe for secondary air injection, which makes sure that your exhaust fumes are less polluting and it passes muster as far as regulations go. Coming over on this side, still have that large imposing exhaust, except instead of having this sort of brushed satin finish all over, you've got this almost powder coated black kind of look to it. In profile, nothing much has changed. It is the same bike, except now they can actually legally sell it thanks to it being BS4. I've always wondered why the Pulsar 220F exists, particularly after the 200 NS exists in the market from the same company. The 220F seems to be an unusual bike in the lineup for me. It's fairly old. It's got a 2-valve engine. Yes, it's larger than 220cc, and perhaps the numbers are what attract the crowd. But I had a quick blast down the track, and I sort of get it, because there's a feeling of torquiness which is sort of missing in the 200 NS. Don't get me wrong, the 200 NS will probably run rings around this. It accelerates faster, it's more nimble, it handles better. But the 220 has that sort of grunty feel of pickup, which I suppose appeals to the ladka log, the kind of guys, head looks like a mushroom, chappals, triple seat in the night, and it continues to sell. So good for Bajaj. Here we go with the 2017 Bajaj Pulsar 180. This is the bike that started it all. Back when Pulsar as a brand actually launched, you had this distinctive profile of tank, which has changed over the years, but yeah, the tank was the most distinct thing about this motorcycle, and the fact that it was 180cc, which was larger than most motorcycles in India at the time. Today, the Pulsar 180 is the smallest of motorcycles that Bajaj sells, which you could consider having any element or pretense of sportiness. Down the line, going with the Pulsar 150 and beyond, you tend to get more commuterish. We'll get to that. So new for 2017, Bharat Stage 4, just like the other bikes. Look around on that side of the engine, and there you go. You've got the secondary air injection once again. Allows you to get away with emissions norms. You got the stepped seat for the sporty vibe. I think it's slightly different in terms of the contour this year. Still got the fake carbon trim, although there appears to be less of it here compared to the 220. The 180 for Bajaj is a bit of a nostalgia factor, perhaps even emotional attachment, because it started it all for the Pulsar lineup. Although I don't think this motorcycle will continue to be in the lineup going forward a year or two, because you've got the 200 and people will come around to paying the extra premium for more performance and capability. This 180, even compared to the new 150, and we'll get to that in a moment, it feels perhaps slightly smoother, perhaps because it's working less hard with its displacement advantage, but torque advantage is minimal, speed advantage is minimal. Take a look at the Pulsar 180. I don't think it's going to be around very long. This is the 2017 5th generation Pulsar 150. It's the bike that Bajaj wants us most to focus on, which is why they've given us a 4.5th generation Pulsar 150 just to do an A/B comparison. This is also, it appears to be a new bike, so we rode that first and then we went across and rode this one. There's a bunch of stuff that's new about this bike, which I suppose explains why Bajaj wants us to take a closer look. So of course you've still got the secondary air injection and BS4 and whatnot. The engine is actually changed in dimensions. The stroke is longer, the bore is smaller, which gives you 1 bhp less on top, and it gives you 1 Newton meter of torque more at its peak. Most of the other stuff is familiar. If you're familiar with Pulsars, you've got a single piece grab rail, which is more commuter friendly. You've got a single seat, again a bit more commuter friendly. Like I said, this is a sporty commuter now in terms of positioning, and Bajaj admits as much. Beyond that, with the 180, 220, 200 series, you've got actual sporty intent, but this is really a sporty commuter now. Most of the buyers of this vehicle will be using it in the city. As far as the ride quality is concerned, Bajaj has made some strides in NVH. It feels like it vibrates less, particularly through the low and the mid range. It's very smooth, just like you'd expect a large commuter to be. It gets buzzy just like the old bike when you're really pushing it, but for the most part it is improved in other parts of the rev range. It's nice and smooth. It sounds a little bit different, maybe slightly burblier, slightly throatier. If you want a sporty 150, Bajaj has you covered with the Pulsar 150. But that's not all. This is the niche but well loved Pulsar 135 LS or Light Sport. In many ways this was a test bed for Bajaj when it came out. This is, apart from the 200 twins, which are liquid cooled and thoroughly modern engines, this is an air cooled but 4-valve motor, and it appears to have the most intricate and slightly messy looking plumbing bits for the secondary injection, as well as the evaporative canister, which in this bike is somewhere below the seat. Nice long and wide seat here, very family friendly. Now the surprise for me with the 135 LS compared to the old 150 and the new 150 is just how smooth and capable the 135 LS is. In terms of top speed, you know, there's not a lot to it. 5-10 kilometers per hour against the 150s, and you get a smaller motorcycle which likes to rev. It feels less stressed, probably to do with the 4 valves. They let it breathe a little bit better than the older configuration of 2 valves on the 150s. It's a surprisingly capable motorcycle for a 135cc. Bajaj has pulled a bit of a Maruti with this lineup. I mean, you can buy a Pulsar at 15, 20, 30 and 40cc intervals. So you've got your 135, skip that generation, you've got a 150, you've got the 180, you've got the 220, the 200 and the RS200. Something for everybody. Bajaj can very clearly take credit for introducing us in India to higher capacity motorcycles. With their KTM tie-up, they introduced us to the Duke 200 and the Duke 390. We had the Pulsar 220F, the NS200, the RS200, all fairly capable bikes in their own way. In that sense, the 180 and the 150 Pulsars are tending to get a little bit long in the tooth. Very clearly with the 2-valve engines, even with Bharat Stage 4 compliance, they're approaching a situation where the next upgrade will have to be more significant in order to stay competitive in the market. Big takeaway for the 2017 Pulsars is actually on the lower end of the displacement scale. The 150, of course, significantly more refined back to back if you test it against the old 150. Also the 135, the 4-valve air cooled, now Bharat Stage 4 commuter. It started off life as the entry point into the sport bike range, but now Bajaj has clearly changed its positioning. Now you've got the 150 as well as the 135 tending more towards commuters, and as far as commuters go, I think they're very capable. They rev nicely, they're well refined, there's not too much NVH. I think they're genuinely competitive bikes. But yeah, that tail lamp